Come on in, sit back and relax. You are listening to episode 284 of the Wealth Tech Today podcast. I'm your host, Craig Iskowitz, founder of Ezra Group Consulting. This podcast features interviews, news, and analysis on the trends and best practices all around wealth management technology. My guest for this episode was none other than James Rockwood, founder and CEO of CapIntel. Some of the things we spoke about include CapIntel's PropGen platform, some of the things that they're doing with that. They did a recent investor survey on trust and advisor relationships. I found the results to be quite interesting, and you will too. That's coming up. We talk about integrations. We love talking about integrations here on the Wealth Tech Today podcast. Got a little bit deep into some of CapIntel's. And then AI and future developments, what's coming down the road for their platform. If you were running an RIA, there's a lot coming down the road for you guys. Your tech stack is critically important to your growth. And without a solid tech stack, how can you grow? As a group, we've seen the tech stacks of literally hundreds of RIAs and broker-dealers. Let me tell you, most of them are loaded down with tech debt. Let's face it, tech debt can act like an anchor, dragging down your RIA's efficiency and ability to scale. Now, if you want to free your firm for exponential growth, you need to run, not walk to our website, ezragroup.com, and click the golden Contact Us button on the homepage. The experienced team at Ezra Group can evaluate your current tech ecosystem, deliver targeted recommendations, optimize your existing systems and operations, or even run an RFP and help you implement new software to get your firm to the next level. Ezra Group just makes tech stacks better. You can take advantage of our free initial consultation by going to ezragroup.com. And now, standard housekeeping chores. Subscribe to the podcast, blah, blah, blah. Check out our sponsor, Invest in Others Foundation at investinothers.org. And if you are a software vendor, go check out our vendor portal at ezragroup.com/register if you haven't already, and sign up so you can update your Ezra Group Wealth Tech integration score, integration data, and your score will always be updated. Now, let's kick this thing off. Hey now, I'm excited to introduce my next guest is James Rockwood, founder and CEO of CapIntel. James, man, thanks for making the time for us.
Thanks so much for having me, Craig. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat.
And people can't see, unless they're watching the YouTube version, but if you're on podcast, you can't see. Is that a gym behind you? I see weights, like a huge weight rack and like a powerlifting bar and a squat bar, just off in the corner. Is that like a humble brag? Like I'm a super weightlifter. I'm going to show that whenever I'm on Zoom calls.
You know, it's awesome. Getting kicked into the basement has its benefits, and so yeah, it's my gym. I built it right after COVID, and so my background is my background. Everything behind me says something about me.
It's not a
And
virtual
so
background.
no, it's that's the real deal. But yeah, that
Nice.
is a gym. Very proud of it.
Impressive. I'm impressed. I'm gonna check your cut next time. I want to see some muscles the next time we get together.
I'll do the
Well,
next one in a
wear a t-shirt. So James, where are you calling in from?
I'm living in Nova Scotia right now in Halifax.
That's beautiful, beautiful area. I love it there. Um, and it's even warmer there than New Jersey, believe it or not. Right?
Yeah, we've been doing well. This winter hasn't been too bad for us. So, but lots more rain than snow this year, which is a blessing.
It's 20 degrees here and it's 32 in Halifax. It's just nuts. And you're a couple hundred miles north. All right. I don't want to complain too much. All right. So James, give us a 30-second elevator pitch for CapIntel.
Yeah, for sure. So CapIntel is an enterprise-only investment presentation platform. So we basically help financial advisors compare different investment products and create really meaningful, holistic, client-facing proposals in a matter of minutes. For us, what we really want to combine is very easy to use, very enterprise-friendly workflows with a really meaningful output to allow retail investors to just understand the investments and feel really good about the products and the advice that the advisor is delivering. So we really want to help and be that advisor enablement or that sort of advisor assisted sale to give them the best materials possible they can put in front of their clients.
I think it's an interesting space. And I'm interested in your product. And you had recently done a survey, an investor survey, and you found some interesting stuff out there. So you found that investors ranked a breach of trust above poor performance as a reason for leaving an advisor. So that seems surprising. What surprised you about these findings? And is there anything else you can share about the survey?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's 1,000 investors with more than 50,000 investable assets who work with a financial advisor, is who we ended up surveying. From our feedback, we weren't as surprised. I think, respondents talked about accurate financial performance info. They talked about also understanding the client's goals were really important. But I think it shows that ultimately people know that performance isn't entirely in the hands of the advisor and really a huge component of what they're looking for. And I think something that really proves out how sticky they have been in the face of technological advancements or things like robo advice or these great self-directed platforms. Why the financial advice industry has been so resilient is because people want to feel like somebody is at the helm for them financially. And I think there's certain areas where people just trust people more. You think about a self-flying plane, you still probably want a pilot in the cockpit for you. And I think there's just certain areas of risk that people want to have another person involved. So for us, um, someone that I can trust was also the top quality by 20% above the next one, which is investment experience. But someone I can trust is the top quality that retail investors look for in financial advisors. So I think it underpins two things. One, that relationship that the advisor's having. Two, how they discuss and the broader conversations they have with their customers. And three, that investment performance, while is important, is not the only reason that they're with you.
Hmm. In your survey, it showed only 62% of investors rate their advisors as excellent in key areas like clear communication and personalized advice. Now, compared to doctors, which I found shocking that 80% of patients gave their doctors a rating of 9 on a 10-point scale, but most investors only give their advisors a 6, or only 62% give them the advisors an excellent, which is not so good. Why do you think that is, and how can they close that gap?
Yeah, so I think that there's sort of two areas. So the first, for sure, technology is a big gap. I think this industry has generally been slower to adopt tech. I think that now people, especially in the proposal space, where you're seeing a lot of interest and a lot of activity now, people are starting to understand the importance of the materials you're putting in front of a retail investor. Investment products are intangible. And in CapIntel, in my view, our job as a technology provider is to do everything we can to make it feel tangible in the moment that a retail investor needs to make a decision. So the way that we look at it, if really hard to talk about something that you can't feel, you can't touch, it's hard to conceptualize, but it's incredibly meaningful and has very tangible results and impacts on people's lives. It's the only industry where you're asking somebody to trust something that isn't entirely intuitive to understand, that you can't touch or feel, but that's going to dictate, do you retire? Well, are you impoverished? Can you afford childcare? Could you afford to put a parent in a facility if you needed to, towards the end of their life? These really important and meaningful, sending a kid to school, buying a house, these are all tangible, really important life goals that you're trusting these intangible products to. And so I think technology can do a huge job in stepping up here, and tech providers can do a huge job in stepping up here to help close that gap for the retail investor. I think the second one comes down to the communication style, the preference, how the advisor is adapting to the changing needs of their customers, is going to be the other one. So having a broader conversation beyond just investments. I think advisors who view their role solely around investing as their core value proposition are really leaving themselves exposed to being able to be replaced, because the thought could be, well, anybody can drive performance, but I need someone that I can trust. And so I think that the more that an investor trusts their advisor, the higher their rating's going to be. So it's a combination of, certainly technology is a big way to go still. We're excited that we're expanding into the US now, and have done very well in Canada. But I think in addition to that, it also comes down to how the advisors adapt to the changing needs and dynamics around their clients.
There's a ton of investment analytics platforms, but not very many that I know of investment presentation platforms. So you're sort of an overlay on the investment analytics tools and the portfolio management process. But you have reported really good results. 81% of advisors that use your platform saw growth in their wealth business with an average increase in sales volume of 40% or 39.5%. I'm rounding up. So why is that? Is it causation? Is it correlation? Is it just successful advisors see the need for investment presentation, or is investment presentation driving their increased growth?
I think it's a multitude of factors. That's over a wide population, and you're going to have different types of advisors. You're going to have people who are kind of in maintenance mode, who have a great book, or just running an awesome business and aren't necessarily expanding. You're going to have the folks who are rapidly expanding. You're going to have the folks that are new, trying to come on board. So I think where CapIntel helps is it's really easy to make proposals. I think I agree with you. There's so many investment analytics tools. There's not many presentation tools. And I think that people have really, as technology providers, have underestimated the complexity of taking analytics and turning it into a presentation. And I think it's just as hard. It's a different type of hard, but it's just as hard because you now need to distill this information to a retail investor, and you need to do it scalably. And that is incredibly complicated. And so I think making that an easy product to use allows the advisor to actually build their own presentation. And anybody who's done a presentation knows you always feel better when you made that presentation yourself. When you know what's in it, when you built it from scratch, you can present that with a level of confidence that's just more overt and just more natural. And if we go back to that earlier stat you mentioned around trust, that trust is established in confident, clear communication to an investor. It's really important the face time that you have with that investor. You're building confidence as much as you can. So having that just a presentation you made yourself, it might sound small, but it's meaningful and impactful. I think as well the quality of the proposals. We say that we have unmatched customization in the proposals that you can generate. So really making them feel personalized, not just for the name of the customer, but actually really looking at their picture, whether it's using integrations, whether it's using content, how you're displaying that information. These are all pieces that build not just a really good presentation that you feel good about as an advisor, but also something that we've tested with retail investors to make sure that it's broadly understandable.
I think anything that an advisor presents to the clients needs to be broadly understandable. That's
You'd be surprised. Like we've done a lot of meetings with folks, and there's some people who want to go ultra heavy on analytics, and that has a place for a specific client type for sure. And actually, that if you come in with a bunch of content to certain investors, it will actually be seen as a total detractor. But for other people, they need that content to make it more comprehensible. And so there's also the diverse needs of retail investors themselves. We for example mapped out six different types of retail investors and the different information requirements that they need based on sort of the archetypes of people we've studied. And I think that as a proposal tool, you need to be able to flex to those different types of needs. And then as advisor, you need to have the discretion to know, okay, I've got my client, he's an engineer or CPA or CFA, and therefore I'm going to go super heavy on the math, but we're going to talk about it much more like a textbook type format, but versus somebody else who may not need that much.
there is a wide range of clients that you have to deal with, and being able to present to them differently is important. So you've talked about a buzzword which I don't like, holistic wealth management. We hear that all the time.
Yeah.
But I think it's becoming more important now, and especially as technology is enabling advisors to present more different services and offerings to their clients at scale without having to hire people because the tech, is either delivering AI or delivering knowledge bases. So what specific aspects beyond what many people would call traditional investment advice do you think advisors should be incorporating?
Yeah, so I think if we dive into the survey a little bit, Some of the other qualities people look at for financial advisors, there's some of the top are the ability to understand my whole financial picture, my ability to discuss my entire financial picture and my goals. People walk in with a goal, right? And what matters to an investor is their goal. And you can really personalize to anchor people on that goal. I want to buy a house in 3 years, or I would like to retire in 15 years. That's a goal. And investments portfolios aren't always the only answer to every financial goal or at every moment when you're discussing a financial goal. And so I think that if you go back to that and you talk about there's the conversation on investments, which is obviously critical. There's also all the conversations that go around the investments. And I think that having discussions that encompass the goal holistically, whether you've done a plan with the client and you're walking that through with them, whether you're talking credit, whether you're talking estate, I think that it's really important to have those discussions. Whether you can action all of them, there's obviously regulations, there's a bunch of hurdles that can go into it. It kind of doesn't matter to at least cover the topic with the customer, right? And you don't have to think, okay, I have to provide advice over this. It could be something as simple as somebody saying, hey, I've got all this money and I've got all these arrangements. And then you ask them, do you have any insurance? And it's like, yeah, I've got car insurance. Something that could help you build trust could be as simple as saying, hey, you should look at broader types of insurance given sort of the amount of wealth that you have. And that could be leading into, hey, plus I know this person down the hall or whatever, or it could just be a statement that says, hey, you should look into this. If you go back to that trust component and that you're really as the advisor, the quarterback to so many different parts of the relationship. Investments always have that anchor part of the relationship. It's the most important. It's the part that's growing. Everything else kind of costs you money, right? This is something that's growing your money. It's exciting. There's a lot of positive emotion around it. So you are the quarterback there to help customers out. So holistic advice, I think I agree with you, is totally become more important. I agree with you, it's also been a buzzword in the past, but I think it's something that we need to be not just talking about, but actioning and providing technology that actually does that. And so for us, when we're thinking about how to help that and how to facilitate those, we think the proposal is a great place to be able to do that.
There's a lot going on in the proposal. So you mentioned credit, estate, insurance, and I don't see a lot of advisors incorporating all of those. I know my advisor, tells me they do, but I don't really feel like I'm getting a picture. They're sort of they have point solutions in these areas. Like they do an estate plan for me. They offer insurance, but I think things like credit, loans, looking at your credit cards or other issues or other lines of credit you might have, um, and then giving advice more holistically is something advisors are still lacking on. How do you see the proposal adding more data and more value there?
Yeah, and I think you've got to be aware of regulations in this component too. Like there are going to be some hard lines where people can't pass through, and I think that that might create some resistance from advisors to want to even open up the discussion. I think proposals can be as simple as trying to educate or collect information about those different needs. It could be something more comprehensive if you have the ability or you have the licensing to offer different products together, or your institution does. I think it can also just be a way to lead to those conversations. Part of it is just having a spot to talk about credit. It could be something as simple as just a little section of the proposal that says, let's talk about credit. That I think really just starts to open up that discussion, right? You don't have to solve everything immediately. You're not trying to sell people everything immediately all the time. I think though, as the advisor, you're trying to say, what matters to me is having a broader conversation with the client because that shows empathy, shows I want to understand their financial picture and goals better, which ultimately leads to a more trusting relationship. Having those and broaching those conversations, even if you can't solve all of them, and I actually think not being able to solve all of them could also help build trust. You say, hey, I actually can't provide advice around this, or I can't sell you a mortgage with investments, but I know some people, or I recommend you go get this looked at. If that person comes up with a good outcome, you're building a ton of trust with them too, because you're not just showing them that, hey, there's another avenue that I might want to make money off of you with. And so I think that it's good to have a broader conversation to the level you're comfortable with. even if it is high level, because I think it's really building trust and giving you also the information as an advisor you need to understand their total financial picture.
I've seen in other interviews, you've mentioned that investment proposals, directly influence 81% of investment-related decisions, which makes a lot of sense. But how do you make these proposals more effective and efficient in today's environment when clients are overwhelmed with information? There's a million different things coming at them, and also advisors as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and this is where that part that I talked about earlier really matters, where it's different building an analytical tool than a proposal tool. And this is the nuance and the area that I think is really critical and important, and where there's a ton of complexity to be able to make it simple, if that makes sense. And so I think you can't just think personalization is putting a client's name on a proposal.
Mhm.
It really comes down to helping you structure the conversation based on who that customer is, based on their financial picture, based on the goals that they have, and having a really educated discussion about that. I think proposals, the way that we look at it, is it's our job to make that product that's intangible feel tangible in the moment that an investor needs to make a decision. You need
Mhm.
to the best extent you can, make them visualize, make them see, make them feel the portfolio, make them feel the products themselves. And I think technology is really the only way to do that. The advisor can have the discussion, they can tee it up. But at the end of the day, that customer is also going to want to see something independent, and they take those proposals home and they make decisions based off of those proposals themselves. So for me, I think it comes down to personalization beyond just the name. I think clarity of the information. So understanding that different types of customers need different amounts of information to make a decision, and how you present that information is really important and impactful. And then I think as well, that piece that cannot be underestimated is the confidence of an advisor who's built their own proposal. It's easy to do. You can do it quickly. You built it. You know what it looks like. You know what to expect. You're comfortable with it. That's also going to be really important because that's going to just improve the way that you talk about the proposal itself.
That's true. I mean, everyone wants to build their own proposals, but they want it to be fast. So,
Yes.
because they have a lot of clients, right? So they're trying to bring, we work with a lot of mostly enterprise RIAs, multi-billion, tens of billions. They're looking to grow. They're looking to scale.
Yeah.
So these proposals have to be personalized, have to be robust, have to be, broadly understandable, as we said, but also it's got to scale. So
Yeah.
how do you balance that, the personalization with scalability when generating proposals?
Yeah, I think that comes down to, I mentioned at the outset that we are an enterprise only firm. And I think that part of our focus on only working with enterprises is we can take the time when we do a deployment to set that client up to have their own environment, to have something that is very quickly personalized, sorry, very scalably and very scalably personalizable, if I can say
Mhm.
that. And
Scalable, yeah,
so,
scalably personalizable. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
that'll be the new buzzword that
Mhm.
comes out after
We'll try to
this.
make it, we're going to make it so.
Yeah, I love that. But yeah, so I think that you've got to have something that's very easy to use. You got to have something that's ready to respond to the common discussions that the firm is having. You have to have something that suits the needs of these specific advisors. So different types of advisors in the same firm have different needs. And I think these are all the broad strokes of how you allow it to happen. I think you need to have a firm that really understands how enterprises work and how large groups of financial advisors successfully operate, and that can have technology that is able to accommodate the different needs of them. And I think that's what's made us really successful. Our entire history has been selling to large enterprise. There's no option starting in Canada. There's no option to sell to small financial institutions. They don't exist. You need to go straight to large enterprises. And for us, that's been in the DNA since day one, since even before the product was built. We were trying to figure out. We had this problem we were really interested in. We didn't know everything about it. We were learning more and more. We were talking to large enterprises the whole way through and people at large enterprises. And so I think that like that in our DNA has really helped us build something that's been able to be really successful with these bigger firms, because it is hard and I think it is really complex, and that's why we see proposal generation as its own discipline,
Mm.
aside from investment analytics. And I think again, as I mentioned before, I believe people have really underestimated how hard this is to pull off, and I think in the same way that it's incredibly hard to pull off in-depth analytics and to do that really well, it's the exact same for proposals. And so that's how we look at it.
None of this stuff is easy. Like we're experts in this software, and when there's tons of options, and there's tons of bad options because people don't, think they can build software, but don't really spend the time to understand how advisors operate or their other workflows or integrations. So speaking of integrations, that's also an important part of a proposal generation system. You got to pull the data from somewhere. You got to push the data. So how do you guys see integrations? What are your biggest systems you integrate with?
Yeah, great question. So, yeah, integrations are key. You want to have integrations. You got to be part of the stack. That swivel chair, I think, that was so prevalent in the industry for so long, especially in the enterprise side. There's just been way less appetite for that. And so we've done partnerships, certainly on the financial planning side. We think that that's critical. Plan tees you up to have that advice and have those discussions. So Conquest is one example of a planning solution that we work with, and so you are able to tee up the client's financial goal and then actually show them the products that will help them get there. Really powerful. As well as working with other portfolio analytics tools too. So FactSet is a good example of a partner that we have in the US, where we embed in part of their workstation to allow for people to seamlessly pass between both systems without ever actually having to leave their core platform. And so we think integration is really critical, in particular in proposal space. And so those are two examples of some of the integrations that we have that I think are really important and that help drive that either adoption because we're part of an existing workflow and familiarity, or that drive those outcomes because it's improving the output that you eventually put in front of that retail investor. That again goes back to that personalization, goes back to that trust building, and goes back to that core competency.
What is coming down the road in 2025 for CapIntel, specifically around AI? Do you have any AI research, any AI you're looking at you think so it can enhance the advisor experience, enhance understandability, and enhance scalability, efficiency? What do you got?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's some like easy workflow stuff that we're working on that is going to help with all this. Being a workflow tool, AI I think is so critical and just helping. Whether you're doing something like getting rid of sort of mundane tasks, like how do I enter in a portfolio? Can I just upload something? Is that faster? AI can just read a statement and enter
Mm.
that in, to having the proposals created based on like the archetype of person. So we really look at AI being really critical in that proposal creation component and that personalization. I read it was a more like doom and gloom early
Mm.
AI article,
Mm.
from The Economist, but I remember the guy referenced mass intimacy was what was possible with AI. So well beyond personalization, but getting into something that's much more in depth. And I think with proposals, if you look at this trust, you look at the what investors are looking for in the outcome, and then we go back to our job, which is really tangibility of these products, is really helping the advisor in that conversation. We see AI as being a huge component to building that. And it's not a mistake that CapIntel is capital intelligence slammed together. It is really something core to how we're building the technology. And we're really excited at the advancements that have happened and how quick and beneficial we think they're going to be for proposal generation in particular.
That's awesome. Wow, we are already out of time. James, where can people find out more about CapIntel?
Absolutely. So capintel.com, that's our website. Absolutely, visit that. It gives a good explanation of everything we talked about today. In addition, you can always reach out. We're at basically all the major conferences. You'll either see us walking around or we'll have a booth. But yeah, you can reach out to us direct on LinkedIn too. Would love to talk to more folks. We're excited to be nearing the 20,000 advisor mark for users. So we're really pumped about that with about 4,000 in the US now. And so we're expanding and very excited to be working with everybody.
That's a huge milestone. Congratulations, and thanks for being here, man.
Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity.
It's Craig again. Here are my top three takeaways from this episode. So with James Rockwood, interesting stuff about their platform. Really like proposal generation and some of the things they're doing with personalization. 81% of investor-related decisions are influenced by the proposal. Thought that was an interesting statistic. Their investor trust and advisor relationship survey. They found trust ranked as a top quality in advisors above investment experience, but only 60% of investors rate their advisors as excellent in key areas. Advisors got to do better. Integrations, of course, they're integrating a lot of stuff. They're integrated with FactSet and Conquest. We love that. You can check out what the integrations are for CapIntel at ezragroup.com on the Wealth Tech Integration Score side of the website. Of course, they're doing some AI stuff, potential applications including automating some advisor tasks, inputting data for portfolios, and even using AI to create proposals based on the client archetypes. And those are my takeaways. I hope you got the same ones, or maybe you had some different ones. If you did, post them online on LinkedIn when you see the link to this, or you can hit me up on Twitter X with your comments on this episode. Love to hear them. And that's the end of this episode. Thanks for listening. Please go to our website, ezragroup.com, scroll to the bottom of the homepage, and sign up for our newsletter. Once a month, you'll receive an email chock full of wealth management goodness, news, information, even updates. You will not be disappointed. Thanks again for listening, and talk to you all again next time.